I'm going to start off with a flower base. So what I use first is a polystyrene ball. Now you can use any size you want. You can get them in craft stores like, you know, Art and Hobby in Ireland, or your local budget craft store like Mr. Price, or have a look online or shop around. They're usually great for making decoupage, Christmas bubbles, or you know, floral arrangements, really anything, but I use them for my flowers. Now I got these in Mr. Price, and I think I got some in Art and Hobby shop as well, but it just depends on how big you want your flower to be. Like, I always like a mix of the flowers, because when you buy a bunch of peonies, they're not all going to be the same size, so you'll have the little buds. I'll just use a few petals on these and it looks like a nice tight bulb of the peony knot, and then use maybe a couple of medium ones and then do like 2 really big ones. That's nice. So I'm going to work on a medium one today, because otherwise we'll be here all night. Ooh, I just burnt myself with my glue gun. Okay, so the next step is to use an 18 gauge wire. Now you can use a thicker one if you want to, or maybe a couple or 2 sizes smaller, but be careful not to go too thin with your wire, because your flower is going to get too heavy once you have all your floral paste on it, and it's going to tipple over to one side. Now you don't want that. So the next thing to do is just to bend your wire so it's flush against the sides, and make a little loop and push it back on itself so it looks like this. Now it's a bit harder to do with thicker gauge wire. If you have a needle nose pliers, brilliant, use it to help you get that nice shape. I just used my little cutter, wire cutter, just to give me a little bit more support in bending it over. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to try and fix this inside your little polystyrene ball. So what I usually do first is just push, make your little space, and then I highly recommend investing in a glue gun. Now you can get them in craft stores. They can usually be very expensive in a craft store. I got this in a hardware shop, and it's a Loctite. So it does give out a bit more glue than the ones you get in the craft shop, which have a tiny little nozzle on it. This one's slightly bigger, so be careful not to burn yourself. I have given myself really nasty burns before, and they're not nice, trust me. So just give a little bit of the glue. Just on the wire. Now, mind you don't burn yourself. And then I'm going to pop that back into the space I made in the polystyrene. And then when you're making flowers, another thing handy to have is a cake dummy, or else if you have like a pasta drying rack or something, a hanger on a door which you can hang this on, just bend the wire over on itself like that and hang it on a hanger or something and allow it to dry while you're getting your floral paste. I've already coloured this. I've used a bit of Sugar Flare colouring. Now I've gone for quite a vibrant pink, just to show you in the video so it's not too pale and you get to see the detail a bit better. So there are, like this one I bought for $3.75 in Anvil in Bray. Now it was quite big, it was about that size. So it's a flower modelling paste by Renshaw. Now I do love Renshaw. Their stuff is great. I love the foil packed white rolled fondant. It's really good for modelling with as well. Especially if you're using silicone molds, it's really good. It's one of the best brands there are out there. Not so much the pre-coloured one. I prefer to get the modelling one in the foil paste or foil bag and then colour it myself, and then take it out. You're not going to need all of this, so just use a little bit at a time. So I mean, a little bit of this stuff goes a really long way, so just take a little ball and then just wrap the rest of it up in cling film. Now get some coconut oil if you have it handy, and then just rub it in your hands and then just coat the floral paste with it, because you don't want it to dry out too much. Roll it in some cling film and give it a nice tight little twist. It'll keep it nice and airtight while you're working away. So dust the space with corn flour. It just stops it from drying out too much. You can use icing sugar if you want to, but personally I think icing sugar dries it out too much, because there's already icing sugar in your paste and you don't want an imbalance. So I just use corn flour. It's really good. There's a little bit of coconut oil on my work surface there, but not to worry about that. So what I usually do is I roll it out flat. As flat as I can. Now, as I said, a little bit goes a long way. So, I mean, when it comes to the colours, you don't have to spend a fortune. I mean, this is one of a set I have. But, I mean, you can use a disc if you want to, a regular small round disc, or you can even use a heart. Now, I have these, so I'm going to use these. They come in, the one I have comes in 4 sizes. So I'm going to use the medium one. Actually, I'm going to use the second largest one now because I'm going to use a small polystyrene bowl. So this is the one I'm going to use. Squire's Kitchen is another brand of floral paste you can get. It is really, really good. It comes in a foil pack and it's usually about €8 or €9. But, I mean, that is beautiful. And they already come pre-coloured as well. But the Renshaw is fine if you just want to make 1 or 2. If you don't make them as often as I do, get the Renshaw. And if you're going to make a lot of flowers, get the Squire's Kitchen because it will last longer. Now, so just cut out a couple of petals. Maybe about 3 for now. I'm just going to wrap that up as well because I don't want that to dry up either. I don't want to waste my floral paste. Now, I'm going to get my little foam board and put my petals down. Okay, so as I said before in the introduction, you don't really have to go out and buy yourself an expensive veiner. The silicone ones are fantastic. If you're a professional and you want to do wedding cakes professionally, well yes, a veiner might be handy, but you don't really have to go out there and spend a fortune because you can get the same effect with the bone tools, which is dual-ended, just like that one. So just what I'm going to do is just kind of drag it out a bit. It also increases the size of the petal. But if I just pull it towards the centre, I find that it just makes the petal nice and thin and you get that lovely sort of texture. Start at the top edges first and thin them out. And then I just go and drag them all down. The petal, if you look at a real peony, you don't really have that many veins on it or kind of natural textures. It's quite a fluffy little watery petal, so they really don't require that much work. So the next thing to do is a little bit of edible glue. Now if you don't have edible glue, you don't have to go out, as I said, spend a fortune again. You can be creative. You can add a little bit of icing sugar and water together, or you can get, if you have rolled fondant for cake covering, just mix a little bit of that with water and it'll do the same job as well. So just paint a little bit on your petal or on your little ball, and then you can just pop your petal down. And you want to cover the ball as much as possible first, because when you're looking down on it, you do not want to see any of this polystyrene. So if you look at a real flower as well, it's going to have really tight little petal balls in the middle. So I usually find about 3 petals cover up the polystyrene nicely. So that's one side done. So I'm going to do another. I don't even have to let go of the ball yet because these don't really require a lot of attention. Now I'm going to do one with a heart just to show you after this what it looks like, to prove to you that you really don't have to go out there and spend a fortune on sugar craft tools. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of money just to get the desired effect either. So just a little bit more icing sugar or a little bit of edible glue. A little bit more. If you want it to overlap nicely. And then just, or you'll see from the bottom. See, I've done 2, and that's like almost 2/3 covered already. Let's get another one. Just drag out my edges a little bit first, because if you look at a real flower as well, the petals usually aren't very thick. They are down the bottom, but not on the top. They're quite... it's hard to describe peony petals. They're really delicate and watery, and if you touch them, you almost damage them. They're like poppy petals almost. Really high water content. I don't really like the culprit glue. I find it very thick, and it doesn't really spread out all that well. I know Stuff for Cakes usually do one for about €5, and it's fantastic. And you get a lot of use out of it. It's a big wide tub with a little brush. I just personally don't like the hassle of having to make it myself. Now, so I have a little heart here, and I'm going to use the tools. Now, how you get that nice jagged edge of a peony is just pull it. Just keep pulling it out. You get that nice, and it doesn't look like a heart anymore. But don't go out there spending a fortune on petal cutters. You really don't need to. Just be inventive. Look around the house and you can find loads. I mean, it's the same with piping. People go out and they try to find really, really tiny little discs for cutting sugar paste with, and you can use your piping nozzle really easily, do the same job. So this is quite a big one because my heart cutter is quite big. But if you're using like a big polystyrene bowl like that, it's going to be perfect. You can get away with the same thing. How thrifty is that? A little peony again. I get my glue. And like I said, just apply the glue from the bottom. And then just work around, overlapping from where you left off. Just here. Now I'm doing them a bit looser on the top, as you'll see. There's a bit more kind of texture going on up here. And you want to make sure that it's nice and like flush on the bottom only. So you can push it down there. I mean, you can use a calyx cutter in the end to make like a dark green sort of bud effect on the bottom, like you see on a rose. But if you're going to do, like I like doing a cluster of peonies on a cake, so you're not really going to see the detail on the bottom. Now, in the big picture I have on the blog, I hadn't really got a lot of time to finish that flower. I had to get home from work and get ready for a party and finish the flower. So I would have done leaves and foliage and stuff, but I didn't leave myself enough time, unfortunately, because flowers can be quite time consuming. So as you can see, apply a bit more to the end. You don't want to add too much to this either, because it kind of makes it a bit too tacky and sticky. You don't want that. So just apply it from the bottom. Push it down. There could be air bubbles in there as well, which you don't really want. It makes it a bit more fragile. And give yourself that little lift on the top. So it comes out a little bit. It's unraveling. Give it some movement. Now right the bottom again. Now when you're starting off with the first few petals, you don't really have to start from the base. You can cover it a little bit because you're going to move the petals down. So it doesn't matter if you're not really right where your wire is. You can use bigger petals as you move out as well. I just have to make a few more of these guys. Like there is no, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people out there going, oh, that's not how you do it. This is not, she doesn't know how to do it properly. There's so many different ways of making flowers. There is no right and no wrong. Just once it looks good in the end, that's all that matters. And you put your heart into it. If you're making one of these for your friends for their birthday, well, you know, aren't they lucky that you made something like this for them? Now these are drying out a little bit, as you've just seen, a little bit came off there. So that's usually why I just work on about 2 or 3 at a time. Now it's usually at this point that I just leave this be, let it hang to dry. Because if you keep putting wet petals upon wet petals, it's going to get really weak and fragile, and it's going to start tearing away on you and getting really sticky, and your hands will stick to it. And so as I said, it's usually around now that I just leave it for a while to harden. So you can actually get more body in it as well if you're working with harder petals. Now I'm going to let that guy come out a bit more. Now that is so far so good. That little guy in there. Because I'm going to let this dry as well, you're going to find a few petals coming out, but that's okay. A bit of glue will fix that right up. Oh, there you go. So far so good. I'm going to take a little break and let it dry and have myself a nice cup of coffee, and I'll come back. I'm just going to drag these out to make them a little bit bigger. You don't want them too big. And always remember, don't do your petals too thick or else they're going to fall back. You want them really light so they stay in place when you stick them onto the flower. So, yeah. Now Wrenchel is a little bit more fragile than the Squire's Kitchen one, the one in the foil pack. So here I have my little flower again, and I'm ready to go on the next layer. So I'm going to grab a petal and then just place it on again. Okay, so you touch these and they're a little bit firmer now because they've sat for about 10 minutes. So it dries really quickly. That's why I always stress the point of, you know, in between layers, wrapping up the rest of the clay that you don't need. Because it's going to dry out and you're not going to be able to use it properly no matter how much coconut oil you put on it. So, this godforsaken glue on the base. Okay, and as we said before, we're going to bring it up a little bit because we'll use bigger petals on the outside. So, and because it's nice and light, it kind of stays put. If you made your layer too thick, it would fall back like that, but it wouldn't stay up. Now I press that in a little bit. See? Now this is starting to look a little bit skinny in the middle, like it's got a waistband on it, like a waist trainer. So you can start moving the petals outwards now, rather than focusing on this part up here. Try and focus them out, because the Peony Roses do become quite bulbous as they come out. So you got the nice effect in there anyway. So far, so good. Okay. You hear my dog scratching himself over there. He's not got fleas, he's lazy. Now, see, I've put this one on and I've given it a little bit more body so it's not like joining the skinny. It's a bit wider now. So you really, at this point, want to start giving it a bit more va-va-voom, a bit more volume. I always love to listen to French cafe music and French lounge music when I'm doing sugar craft. It kind of chills me out a bit. But This is a little bit too corny for me. Good on you, Spotify. Now, see what I mean about this little former being so good? You can just pop that up there, slide the cookie case back, or the cupcake case back up, and then let it dry for a bit longer.